seen so
Sorry.
no worries. I have seen so many changes in the landscape of college admissions over the last 21 years. I don't know, for some of you on this call might have actually mailed in your college applications. And when I started doing this work, I actually taught kids to address envelopes and put stamps on envelopes to mail those applications. And of course, now we're completely electronic and everything is digital. So I feel like I've done this. It's the only work I've ever done. And it continues to change and excite me. The pandemic has definitely brought a lot of changes to the college admissions landscape, but there's a few things that actually have never changed, even through all the iterations of college admissions and how schools accept students. And so we're going to talk about one of those tonight, and that's the transcript. We're going to do a deep dive into it. As Michelle said, if you have any questions, definitely throw them in the chat. Full disclosure, I'm an amazing college counselor and technology is not what I do. So thank you, Michelle, for hosting this. And I cannot see any of you and I cannot see your questions. So if something pops up, and we'll pause every now and then, and Michelle will share those questions with me, and some we might save to the end as well. So she's going to help me out and maybe interrupt me every now and then if I'm moving too quickly. So anyway, tonight, thank you guys for being here. And tonight, really what we're going to do is focus on the transcript, focus on the parts of the application that we have some control over, some we don't have a lot of control over. But again, to be able to do that, I think it's really important for us to talk about and just kind of start with the landscape of college admissions and the state of the nation. And I start most presentations with this to remind parents that most colleges accept most of their applicants. The bad news is that there's about 40 very highly selective schools in the country that most parents talk about, and your kids know all their names. Those schools accept less than 10% of their applicants. And so there is some bad news. There will always be the bad news, but the reality is the majority of colleges in this country will accept most of the kids who apply. So as I say, it's very important to create a balanced college list. It doesn't matter if you have an 8th grader or a 9th grader or an 11th grader, creating that balance is really, really, really important. And we'll have many more webinars to talk about this and visiting schools and all the things that you can do to help with that balance list. But I want to kind of start with that in mind. I think it's an important principle. And finally, that great college experiences happen everywhere, right? Wonderful college experiences and the best jobs and the best internships are not only reserved for the most highly selective colleges in the country and the students who attend those schools. Yes, those opportunities are there, but as I remind parents and students all the time, it's what you do when you're there that will be a much bigger impact and will have a greater influence on what comes next for you after college. So helping your child to find the best fit is very important. And that's something that we focus on at Collegewise. So let's talk about the parts of the application. And this to me was important because I want to make sure people understand that there really are two sides to the application. It's not as simple as what's your GPA or what are your test scores, or are you going to write a great essay? There really are two very distinct pieces of the application. And every school is a little bit different. And so we're going to talk about some of that tonight so you get a better sense of who's looking at what. So the one side of the transcript is the data piece, right? And so that's where students are expected to be impressive. That's your transcript, which we're going to talk about tonight, and grades, the courses that you've taken in high school, your activity list, how have you spent your free time when you're not in the classroom, and potentially your test scores. And I put that in parentheses because we're living in a test optional world right now. We hope, people like me hope that continues for those who aren't great test takers. But if you have an amazing score, college is like that. So that's kind of that impressive piece. And those things are very fixed and very measured by colleges. They use different things, indexes, and they're tracking that data, that impressive piece very, very, very closely. And then there's this other side of the application. And for people like me, we kind of lean this way anyway. And this is the place where students have the opportunity to connect with the admissions readers and to connect with the college. And I call that the human side of the application. So this is where students get to share about themselves in the personal statement. So that's the main kind of college essay that goes to every school that they apply to. the way that they talk about the activities that they've been involved in. So it's one thing to say that you are, first chair violin, or you're the captain of the soccer team. Okay, then you sound like the 40,000 other kids who are also the captain of the soccer team or the first chair violinist. But if you're a student who can talk about the passion in your writing and that comes out in that activity list, that's a great way to connect with admissions readers. Show some humor, be a little self-deprecating, brag about yourself a little bit there. Whatever your personality is can really be shown in your application there. Also, the individual college essay questions. And again, we could have an entire webinar just talking about the essay and the essay questions, but many colleges are very specific in the questions that they ask students on the application. And it's because they're looking for particular types of students, or they're looking for very specific ways to evaluate the student in terms of how they answer the question. So this could be not just why are you interested in your major, but tell us about a time in your life where you had to overcome an obstacle and who did you lean on for support? Tell us why. Whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot for a 17-year-old to answer, but that gives you a glimpse into why a school, by the way, University of Miami, asked that question. They want to get a sense of how that student thinks. So those individual essay questions are great opportunities for kids to really show who they are and what motivates them. Letters of recommendation. So this is, how do the adults in your life talk about you? What does your school counselor say about you? What does your English teacher say about you? What does your science teacher say about you? What does your coach say about you, or your theater director, or your art teacher? The people around you who are going to speak to how engaged you are in the classroom, how engaged you are outside of the classroom, very, very important, and a great way to kind of connect to that human side. I work a lot with our students about forming connections. We start this early in 9th and 10th grade, teaching them about reaching out to their teachers. This is something Michelle and I have in common. It's one of the reasons I love S4 and what they do, because they actually teach kids how to interact with their teachers, which is so important, and something that has to start so early. So that also plays into eventually getting those amazing letters of recommendation. And then again, in parentheses, because this doesn't always apply, but an interview. There are a very small number of schools currently who actually have evaluative interviews for their students. There's some that have informational interviews. But again, this is another way that students can show a little bit of the personality and show the human side to the application. So in all these, and you saw our kind of teasers about what tonight was going to be about, we answered our question, which was, what's the most important piece of the application? And I would say all of these are important, but if we have to choose one, it's absolutely the transcript. So we're going to talk about that tonight and kind of what that looks like. But it was important for me, for everybody to kind of understand all the pieces that are involved, because I don't want to put so much weight on this one thing when all these go into it. But every single college in the United States focuses on the transcript. So we're going to talk about the transcript now. Here I go, trying to move the slide. Ooh, Michelle, can you help me out here?
Let me go back.
There we go. Here we go.
Is this it?
Nope, I'm going to go back one more.
Okay.
Here we go. Oh, I'm sharing all my secrets, guys. Okay, here we go. Transcripts. So I put 2 examples on the screen. I know these are teeny tiny, but we will share this with you guys after the fact. So you don't have to take any notes here. But these are 2 just different examples of transcripts that every single high school in the country offers transcripts to their students, and they can look very, very different. And we're going to kind of talk about the different parts of them. The one on the right side of your screen is from Staples High School, and I work with a lot of kids at Staples. And so I literally just took one of my students, and here it is with his information removed. And we're going to look at it a little bit more closely together. So what a transcript is it's actually one piece of paper that has information, kind of a snapshot into your child's high school career. And it includes 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade classes, and the student's final grade in that class, as well as how many points that class was worth. So a full year class could be worth 1 point. A half year class would be 0.5 points. A gym class, probably 0.25 points, because it's just a little quarter class. And all these things add up to create kind of a picture of who your child was in high school. Additionally, most students, when they submit their transcript to the college, it will also include a listing of their senior year courses, because colleges are looking for that kind of trajectory and they want to get a sense of, all right, you took all these classes in 9th, 10th, and 11th. Well, are you taking 3 gyms senior year? Are you taking 4 culinary periods? Are you continuing with that academic program that you had shown us from 9th, 10th, and 11th? So this is just a snapshot, so you know what we're actually talking about. And here I've blown this up because my eyes don't see that little thing on the left-hand side. But this is just so you can get a snapshot of, this is the student's 11th grade classes that he took. And you can see here the grade that he got in them, the credits that each was worth. And again, this goes on for 10th grade and 9th grade as well. And then the senior year would just be a listing of the classes with the credits with no actual grade, because senior year grades don't happen until June when students are graduating. And so kids will say to me all the time, well, aren't they going to recalculate my GPA? And what, I got an A in my English class senior year, first quarter. We don't recalculate GPAs. Colleges don't recalculate GPAs, and high schools don't recalculate them. So students only really get kind of brownie points for the classes they're taking in senior year. There aren't really grades associated with that. That's going to change kind of the academic weighted or unweighted GPA that would exist at that point. All right. So next, I put this up here because, again, you can see where my heart is with these things when I work with so many students that are so focused on their GPA and want sometimes to put on their college applications their GPA to the like 6th decimal place. And I'm like, that's embarrassing. I don't allow one decimal. It's all we're going on this. So I love this image. This student is saying, I'm not defined by a number, right? The GPA is reflective of what has happened in your high school experience and maybe how seriously you took your studies or how consistent you were or inconsistent you might have been. It's really just a snapshot into what you've done up until that point. But I try, and as parents, I also have teenagers. So as parents, it's our job to remind our students it's not just about that number. And we're going to talk about why that's so important in the college process. Okay, so let's talk about GPAs because that's an important piece of the transcript. And then we're going to dissect some of the class stuff that's listed as well. So I get a lot of questions about weighted versus unweighted GPAs. And so I'm going to explain that to everyone tonight. So on this student's transcript, you can see that his, here we go, that his unweighted GPA is a 3.73 and his weighted GPA is a 3.79. Now, as a college counselor, this is very, very close. It's a 3.7 and we don't round up. We don't say he has a 3.8. We don't do that. He has a 3.7 GPA. And his are very similar. And the reason his are very similar is because the difference between a weighted and an unweighted GPA is just getting extra points for taking honors or AP classes. So this is a student who historically did not take a lot of honors and AP classes. So he didn't have an opportunity to get those extra points, which would show a differentiation. I work with some students who could have an unweighted GPA of a 3.7 and a weighted GPA of a 4.02, right? Same student, very different GPAs. And that has to do with getting extra points for some of the more advanced classes that a student would take. So parents will say to me, well, what do colleges want? Weighted or unweighted GPAs? We're going to get to that. We, as a rule of thumb, and any high school in America would tell your students, put the highest one on your application, like period. Whatever the highest one is, that's the one that you want to share with the colleges. And I'll explain why in a second. We would do that. But this number is calculated there. Now, every high school is a little bit different. At Staples High School, for example, which is in Westport, and I know Ward and Ludlow, also in Fairfield, do not calculate GPAs every single year for students. They really try to wait until the end of junior year because kids get obsessed about it. But every single student I know has an app and calculates their own GPAs and think they have it all figured out. And I always remind them, it doesn't matter what you figured out on your app, whatever it says on this piece of paper is what's submitted to a college. And that's what we have to also mimic as well. So very important to know how these are calculated school to school. Okay. So I just wanted to throw this out there because we're going to talk math in a second, which is something I don't really love, but I've gotten really good at, and especially in terms of calculating GPAs. So I just wanted to show this as a snapshot because, again, every high school is a little bit different, and colleges, funny enough, also look at these a little bit differently. So while your student may go to a high school that gives A pluses and A minuses and B pluses and B minuses, there are some high schools that don't give pluses and minuses. They just give straights A, B, C, D, Fs. Colleges also, in recalculating GPAs, which is going to terrify some of you when we talk about this in a second. When colleges recalculate GPAs, there are some colleges out there who are not giving your kids credit for an A plus. An A is an A. And it doesn't matter if it's a minus or a plus or a regular A, you're going to get the same points for whatever that grade is. That is very disturbing news for kids and for parents. We don't talk about this a lot, but this comes into that recalculating GPA thing. So I just wanted to, again, give you a little bit of a snapshot. This is pretty typical of how GPAs are calculated. Again, I could probably find an obscure high school in Wisconsin that maybe has a little bit different scale than this, but this is on average pretty much what it looks like when we're calculating GPAs. And how you do that is basically the number of points earned divided by the total credits that they've tried, how many classes have they tried, and that's their GPA. So it's not crazy math. It's pretty simple when you have that full transcript laid out in front of you. So I wanted to show this to you because this is a great graphic. And the graphic on the top, the purple unweighted, is showing you a student who is in what I'm going to call college prep level classes. So no honors, no AP classes, who got an A in English, an A in Algebra 2, an A in Gym, an A in Biology, and a B in World History. So you can see based on that scale that I just showed you, that student would have a 3.8 GPA, right? If we look at the student on the bottom with the weighted GPA, just to get a sense, this is a student that, and by the way, the weighted GPA and unweighted would be identical for the kid on the top. But a weighted GPA, when you look at the student on the bottom who took AP classes and honors classes, you can see is getting extra points. So this is a student who, although they have 2 Bs and 3 As, has a higher GPA than the student who got 4 As and a B. Does that make sense to everybody? It's a little, I know it feels crazy, but this is really important when we start talking about courses and course selection for students and the kind of classes that students are taking. Because people will say to me, well, how can you get over a 4.0 GPA? And this is how that can happen, even without getting straight A's in your classes. All right. So yes.
So basically that slide indicates that rigor matters.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, Michelle. Thank you. Yes. But that's a great bullet point. Rigor absolutely matters. Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's basically, when we think about the transcript, and I'm going to go up to this course rigor. There you go, Michelle. She knows it so well. That the kind of classes that your child takes absolutely matter. Absolutely. And maybe more so in some colleges than other colleges, just like we have many, many different kinds of high schools in the United States, we have many different kinds of colleges in the United States. And there are some schools that care about things more than others. And just to give you a sense of this, I just pulled some data as I was getting ready for our presentation, because I thought, let's talk about some actual real schools and how schools are going to calculate GPAs and what they're going to actually look at. And if we go back to the main kind of core that we want students to take, math, science, English, history, and foreign language. Those 5 core classes are ideally what most colleges would like students to take for all 4 years. Math, science, English, history, foreign language for 4 years. And so there are some colleges out there who will only look at those core classes when recalculating a GPA. So let's talk about this very scary thing for a second. You've got a child who's worked really hard all throughout high school, taken as many challenging courses as they could, and ends up with a 3.8 GPA. And everyone's very happy about that. And this student applies and they've taken all different art classes that they love, and they've taken maybe a computer science class that they were excited about, and maybe they're in a chorus class. Wonderful. And they get A's in all those classes, and they've got this great GPA, and maybe in their English class and their history class they get some B's and C's, but they've been able to maintain this 3.8 GPA because they've taken all these extra elective classes that they're getting A's in. So it's helped their GPA. And then they apply to college, and they apply to Emory University. So Emory University, amazing school in Atlanta. So straight from Emory's website. So this is information, it's not secrets, it's right there on their website. They say, Emory uses a core unweighted GPA. We count courses only in English, math, science, social studies, and foreign language without any additional weight added for AP or honors courses. What? Emory University, an amazing university, is saying we're not using weighted GPAs, and we don't care about your chorus class, and we don't care about your gym and your art class. Doesn't matter. We're only going to use the 5 core subjects, and we're not giving extra points for honors and AP classes. That's scary, right? And then we have another school like University of Florida that recalculates a core weighted GPA, but uses different weights than most high schools. So University of Florida creates their own index. So no one's having a 4.0 who's applying to Florida. They use a number scale that goes up to 300. What? So guess what? The rules are not consistent across the board, which makes this very stressful for your kids and for you as parents sometimes, not really understanding what happens. Indiana, with the Kelley School of Business, very well known for the business school. Indiana doesn't recalculate anything. Whatever numbers on the GPA is what Indiana uses, period. They do no extra recalculation at Indiana. So here's 3 different, very mainstream schools who are going to look at transcripts and GPA very differently across the board. So what are you supposed to tell your kids who are stressing out about the kind of classes they take and are recalculating their GPA and have the app on their phone and are looking at it 4 times a day and refreshing PowerSchool over and over and over and over and over? These are the kids that I say, take a breath, take a break. Because your transcript, yes, it's a snapshot of your high school experience and your high school career and what you chose to do with your time when you were in high school. But you don't know in 8th grade where your child's applying to school. And by the way, I have some junior kids, parents, and students who don't know where they're applying. And so you can't make decisions on your high school choices and course selection and what you do in high school because you think a college is going to want something. Now, my job as a college counselor is to tell you what colleges are going to want, but the answer is that it's different across the board. So I always remind families that transcripts are going to focus on your course rigor, what you're doing, your grades, how well did you do in the classes that you took, and have you displayed a love of learning? And we're going to talk about that and how that can happen. Remember how I said that your senior grades aren't actually on your transcript? They're not. No one's going to recalculate your GPA based on your senior classes, but many schools out there will require first quarter or first semester grades from seniors before they make decisions. So I remind seniors, you can't just take 5 AP classes senior year and hope that you're going to get credit for that and end up with a bunch of C's and D's in those classes. So senior year classes matter, but no one's recalculating GPAs. They're not going to go through that extra work. Okay.
Amy, I have a question
Yes.
that somebody put in the chat.
Perfect.
What about private schools that only offer different levels for math classes and don't weigh anything? And the citation is such as Hopkins.
Yes. So this is important. And I'm trying to move my screen forward. Here we go. My cursor just wants to just keep going.
I'm trying to put the box down for the chat. So that's what it is. So I won't touch this.
Got it. Okay. So this is important, and we're going to come back to AP and honor classes because I want to answer this question because we're going to talk about the school profile. Your child is not going to be penalized when they don't have an opportunity to do something. So remember, there's over 40,000 high schools in the United States. meaning there's over 40,000 valedictorians, there's over 40,000 captains of the soccer team, there's over 40,000 senior or student body presidents, right? There's also 40,000 different ways that students are evaluated. And so colleges rely on something called the school profile, and every single one of your high schools have this. And if you don't know what it is, it's a great thing to ask your child's guidance counselor. You can also just Google it and just type in the name of your high school, Hopkins School Profile. It will show up. High schools or update this every single year, because the information that's on the school profile could change year to year. So because grading systems are different, and because colleges have to get a snapshot of who these students are and what is available to the students, they have to know what the school profile reports. And also, because they're just not going to penalize kids. There are many schools, many high schools in the United States that don't have AP classes and don't have honors classes. There's some high schools that only do quarter-long classes, and some have full-year classes. So here's an example. Again, I pulled up Staples High School. It's very tiny to see, but it's actually a 2-page document. And you'll notice on here, there's a little blurb about the school. It talks about the transcript and grading. So remember we talked about how are students evaluated and how do those GPAs get calculated? Right here, Staples is saying this is how we calculate GPAs. At the bottom, you'll see the bar graph where it's actually showing the class of 2021 6th semester GPA distribution. So they're showing where the range of students are. So students who have a, below a 2.0 GPA all the way up to a 4.3 plus GPA are listed there. So this is when colleges are trying to figure out, okay, this is a student who goes to this high school. They have a 3.8 GPA. Oh, it looks like they're kind of in the mid-range at their high school, or they're going to be in the top 2% or top 10% of their high school, or maybe they're at the very bottom of that percentage. And I say this to families and to parents to say, it's okay. This is part of college admissions counselors' jobs, is to figure out where your child is in relation to the other students first at their high school, at their own high school, is who they are evaluated. And I hate to use the word against, but evaluated with, let's say it that way, right? It's not a competition between your child and the person who sits next to them in their math class, but colleges just want to get a sense of how are they doing in relation to the other students. The second page of this I'm going to share with you, and this is what I find fascinating, high school to high school. They're also required to list the number of AP or honors classes that are offered to students. So right here, Staples High School is saying they offer 25 different advanced courses, 25 AP courses and 36 honors courses for the students who go to their school. Now, someone might say to me, do you ever know anyone who took all 25 AP courses? No, not at Staples. The most I've seen ever is 19, which is a lot, by the way. It's a lot of, not 19 in 1 year, but 19 in a high school career. And those are students who are taking AP classes even in 9th grade and might be doing them in, through community college or in the summer as well. So the question from the parent whose child's at Hopkins is a great one. Hopkins has one of these. They have a school profile. So a fun thing for you as a parent to do, it might be look at it and see, where does your child fall in relation to the other students who go to their high school? So colleges use this to see that GPA that you're showing us and the classes that they've taken, how do they fall in relation to what's being offered? I remind students all the time, a 3.5 GPA at Staples High School or at Fairfield Ward or at Greenwich High School is different than a 3.5 at a rural high school in Iowa, right? That who maybe doesn't, a school that may not offer all of these opportunities to students. We're very blessed in Fairfield County, and our schools, for the most part, have amazing, amazing resources. Colleges are not going to penalize students who haven't had the same access to those resources. So everyone is evaluated against, first of all, their peers at their high school, and then kind of the larger community, surrounding community, and then the country, and also the world with international applicants as well. So school profile is an important thing to check out. And if you're one of those parents who says, I think my kid's a rock star. I mean, I think that they're the smartest thing ever. And they just look at your school profile. It may reaffirm what you already know, or it might be interesting and surprising for you to see. And then again, I would encourage you to maybe talk to the school counselor or dean or someone at your child's school, just to get a sense of where they fall in relation to the other students. But school profile, that's a great thing to talk about. I'm going to just backtrack here because I had a slide here and I thought this was important because I get this question a lot. And just as a little preview, and Michelle will talk about this later, in January, we're going to do a webinar just about course selection, because I know that's something that weighs on parents significantly. Also, it really weighs on kids a lot in terms of how do we choose what we're going to take. But I get this question in almost every presentation I do about transcripts and grades, which is AP and honors courses. And if your school offers those, how many are you supposed to take? This is one of the biggest wives' tales in college admission. When I hear a parent say to me, well, I heard we're supposed to take like more every year. So we take like 2 this year and next year she has to take 3. I just want to remind you that AP classes, these are advanced placement courses where students can potentially get credit for college if they do well enough on the AP test at the end of the year. But these classes are not all created equal. For example, an AP physics course is not the same as an AP environmental course. And an AP calculus course is not the same as an AP statistics course. There are some AP classes that are considered elective classes that are, I hate to say easier because all this is very relative and depends on the teacher who's teaching it, but colleges look at AP courses very, very differently in terms of what the student is actually taking. And again, are they showing a progression throughout their high school experience? If you have a child who loves math and absolutely hates English and hates reading, please do not push your child into AP Lit or AP Lang, these AP English classes. Encourage them to take more math classes, higher level math classes, because when we go back to that love of learning and showing what you're really interested in, we want students to be taking courses that they're most comfortable in, where they can push themselves appropriately. I see students get in so much trouble who think they're supposed to take X number of AP classes or supposed to take X number of honors courses and end up dropping classes halfway through the year, end up with very low grades on their transcripts because they had to drop the class or maybe switch into a lower level class. Or even worse than that is they try to stick with it in these AP or honors classes, and then they end up with C's or D's, God forbid. Now, I once had a student say to me, but if I get a C in my AP Calc class, it's okay, because that's kind of like getting a B. I mean, I guess when they calculate your GPA, but all a college admissions person sees is this person took an AP Calc class, they got a C, we don't think they can do this level work. So there's a student who's actually hurt themselves in the college process because they took a class that was way above their level, they didn't do really well in it, and now it's like a highlighted mark on their transcript. So when we talk about course selection, I really encourage parents and students to think about the classes they're recommended for by their teachers who actually teach them, who know their level of engagement in the classroom, and 2, to really weigh it in terms of everything else they're doing. If you have a child who's uber involved in theater, uber involved in sports, or working full-time, are they going to be able to manage multiple AP and honors level courses? It's a big stress for parents and for many, many families. I know when in January and February course selection time, I get a lot of questions concerned that they're going to do the wrong thing. And when I come back to you and I always say it's about where your student is comfortable and where they're going to be most successful. We would much rather a student be in the appropriate level classes and get straight A's than be in classes that are way above their level and end up with straight B's, because that doesn't show a mastery of the information. That shows a student who probably struggled and struggled and struggled all year long, and their GPA is actually going to end up being a little bit lower when it's calculated as well. Okay.
Amy,
Yes.
we have a question.
Yes.
Are AP tests offered as part of the school year or something that happens after the school year and done on one's own?
That's a great question. So it depends on the school, but 99% of the schools, and especially the public schools, offer AP test during the school year. AP tests, the advanced placement test, are actually owned and distributed through the College Board. And if that name is familiar to you, it should be, because they are also the people who own the SAT exam. So the College Board owns the AP program, and they make a lot of money off of AP test. And so they work very closely with the high schools to help them to be coordinated and offered in the actual high school. So when students register for an AP class, they actually have to register on the College Board website. And then students are given the opportunity if they want to take the test or not. And most high schools, I know in our area, make kids sign up for the test, which actually doesn't happen until May. In November, usually by mid to end November, students have to have said whether or not they're going to take the test. The question wasn't asked, but I'm gonna answer the question that many people may not even know they should be asking, which is, parents will say to me, what if my kid just bombs the AP test? Well, guess what, guys? Here's one of the beautiful gifts of the college admissions process. There is not a college out there who requires AP test scores. Not one single one. So your child could take an AP class and could bomb the AP test at the end of the year and still gets the credit for taking the AP class, because they're going to get extra points on their GPA. And as I say to students all the time, if you have a choice about focusing on your actual grade in the class or studying for the AP test, focus on your grade in the class, because we would much rather see you get an A in that AP class. Now, if you get an A in the AP class and you ace the test, that's wonderful for you. Many colleges will give students credit for the AP class that they took, up to 3 credits. If they get a 3, 4, or 5 on the test. And some schools will say you have to get a 4 or 5. So a perfect score in an AP test is a 5. And so a lot of students, you hear these stories about kids entering college and already having 12 or 15 credits. This is how they do that. They're taking AP classes. They're sitting for the AP test in May. Again, universally, they're given in May. They get their score kind of midsummer, and then they kind of hold on to that. If I have a student I'm working with who gets 4s and 5s on AP test, we are absolutely putting those on their college application. I say it's like a cherry on top of an ice cream sundae. It only makes it better. It's not required, but it can actually only make it better. So if you have the opportunity and a student's doing well, we absolutely want them to take those tests. In the same respect, I counsel a lot of students who might have test anxiety, who are overwhelmed by the thought of taking these AP tests, who are so crazy focused on their maybe GPAs, or maybe they're playing a spring sport and they don't have time to put in the AP test. And I say, talk to your teacher. Some teachers will penalize students who don't sit for the test, because a lot of teachers are evaluated based on how well their students do on the test. So I always say to students, before you decide just to not sit for the test at the end of the year, talk to your teacher to make sure you're not going to be penalized in your actual end of year grade for taking it or not. Doesn't matter the score. They're not going to get the score until the summer. So the teacher will have to give them a grade on their report card and on their transcript before they ever get the actual score for the AP test in the summer. So that's really a case-by-case basis, but I do have some students who actually never sit for the AP test. They take the class and they do really well and they get a good grade and it ends up on their transcript, but there's no expectation from colleges that you would have to report them or not. It's good, Michelle? Yes?
It's good. I have another question. I
Yeah.
think I'll have to wait till we get, I think we're getting into a little bit more specifics.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I'm just gonna.
Oh my goodness.
That question.
I'm doing bad with my, it's so sensitive. The little,
Okay,
what happened, Michelle?
I don't know. Let me get back to it.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
Oh, sorry,
I warned you about our technical abilities here.
I'm just as hopeless.
we
Okay,
go.
so where were we, Amy? What?
We were on right there where it says teacher evaluation. Let's go to that on the left side, number 17. Yes, perfect. Okay. So this is another piece kind of to piggyback thank you, Michelle, as Michelle's pulling this up, kind of to piggyback on the parent who asked about, well, what if my school doesn't offer AP classes, and what if that's not an option for my student? How are they going to get kind of those brownie points in the admissions process? And this is another piece of that. So I just wanted to show this to you because I think a lot of parents don't understand how teachers can influence this process, or how guidance counselors can influence the process. And this goes back to the human side of the application that we talked about before, in addition to the transcript, because I might have a student who was in my English class who ends up with a B+, but it might be one of the hardest working students that I've ever worked with, who started off the semester at a very low point and worked their way up, or who came in once a week to conference with me about their writing, or who stayed after class and helped other students. And I just think is going to be a rock star when they go to college. So maybe they didn't get the A+ in my class, but they're an A+ student. And so teachers have the opportunity to share that with colleges. And this goes back to what I was saying before about how Michelle does such a great job with her tutors and really trying to teach kids how to engage with their teachers. So this is actually part of a college application, the teacher evaluation form that they have to fill out. Students never see this, by the way. Most high schools in our area have rules against, students have to waive their right to be able to see this so the teachers can be really honest. And so the first question says, how long have you known the student? What context? What are the first words that come to mind when you describe this student? And then please write whatever you think is important about this student, including a description of academic and personal characteristics as demonstrated in your classroom. We welcome information that will help us differentiate the student from others, and you can attach additional information. And then there's always a checkoff list. And I wanted to show this to you because if you look at the top, it's very small, but it basically wants the teacher and the counselor to rate your child based on how they fall with their peers, in relation to their peers. So the choices are below average, average, good, above average, very good, well above average, excellent, like the top 10%, outstanding, the top 5%. And the very last box, the very last column says, one of the top few I've encountered, top 1%. Now, this is very subjective, by the way, but if you talk to any teacher, any educator, any college counselor, we will tell you that top 1% exists. And in my entire career as a college counselor, I can say that I've had three students in the hundreds of kids that I have worked with individually that I would put into that top 1% column. And you wouldn't be shocked at the schools they got into either, because what they showed me is exactly what they showed their teachers. It's how engaged they were in the classroom. It's going above and beyond all the time. So I wanted to show this to you as parents because I think it's so important for you just to get a snapshot of this. It's not, yes, it's the transcript, but how your child does in relation to the other people that are around them, and not because we want to compare them. And please don't get off this call tonight and then go to your child and say, oh, well, do you know how the other kids are doing in your class? And, oh, I heard she studied for 5 hours and I heard he was taking 8 AP classes. And this isn't to compare and to pit kids against each other, but it's for you as parents to understand how your child is eventually going to be compared in this process. So anyway, so I love sharing that with parents. The next part is test scores, and I would be remiss if I did not bring this up. And we're getting a lot of questions about this, and we have some answers, but not a ton of answers about what it will look like moving forward. We've been in a 2-year period because of the pandemic in a test optional world where students didn't have the opportunity to take the SAT and ACT as they had been before. Lots of cancellations. If you read the newspaper or watched the news, you probably heard about this over the last 2 years, or you might have had a child who was affected. It's a real thing. And almost every single college in the country, with the exception of the military academies, state of Georgia public universities, became test optional, basically saying they were not going to penalize students who didn't have the opportunity to take a test. What this did is this opened up an entire world for kids who just aren't great test takers, and really gave another choice to families about whether or not they wanted to pursue testing, and doing test prep and paying for test prep, with their students. So I put this up here to you because there's a lot of uncertainty about what will happen moving forward. But just to give you a sense, and I had this up here before, today, as of today, I looked up the number. There are over 17,000 test optional colleges in the United States for the class of 2022. That's a lot of schools, amazing schools. Name any school that you can think of is probably test optional. There's very few that are not. And so I put this there along with the website. If you want to see the list, if you're curious about what that is, it's a searchable database. You can go to fairtest.org. It's a fabulous website that literally keeps track of all of these schools. It will also tell you the testing policies moving forward. So there's some colleges that have said, we are going to be test optional till the end of time. There are some schools that were test optional before COVID, which was great. And there are some schools that say we're committed to being test optional through 2025 or through 2030 even. And so this website is amazing because you can actually literally look up the name of any school to see which of those will continue to be test optional. I point this out. I know we're talking about transcripts, but I can't tell you how many kids in the last year I've been able to have really honest conversations with. These are students who work really hard and put a lot of time in after school to keep up with their schoolwork and to maintain really strong GPAs and have really strong transcripts. And if I said to those kids, oh, by the way, junior year, you're going to have to add an additional 6 or 8 hours of test prep a week into what you're already doing, these kids would fall apart. These are kids who are working very hard, who might be staying up until 11 or 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning doing their schoolwork, and to be asked to do even something else is very overwhelming for them. So for these students, we've been able to go to them and say, listen, you're a strong student. You have a 4.3 GPA. You've taken all these AP and honors classes. You get the choice. Do you want to take a test or not? You can be test optional. You don't actually have to sit to take the SAT or ACT. Now, depending on it, if you have an 8th grader, you don't need to worry about this just yet. This is something that you would not even think about probably until 10th grade for most of you. So if you have a younger student, hold off. Don't just say they'll never have to test. But if you have a sophomore or junior, you could rest assured very comfortably that there is enough schools to choose from, that we don't need to continue to make this a pressure cooker for students and to say everyone must do this. Schools are actually, when we say test optional, all except for Georgetown, who really want scores, and Michigan, by the way, who says they're test optional, but they actually really want scores too. Most of the schools, when they say they're test optional, they're actually test optional. And we have the data really to back that up over the last 2 years, which has been nice. Yeah.
We have a great question here. What is the data on admission results for students that did not submit test scores versus those that did? And are they truly on par with one another? In other words, how truly optional are the test scores, even if the colleges say they are optional?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And again, I hate to use the gray of college admissions, but it's just gray in college admissions, just like we talked about schools that are going to calculate GPAs differently. So the majority of schools that are test optional, I would say 95% of the schools that are test optional are truly test optional. There are amazing schools out there that have been holistically reviewing students since way before COVID. Bates College, amazing, Lewiston, Maine. If you're looking for an amazing small liberal arts college, it is the very first test optional school. Over 30 years ago, Bates was test optional and has been so since. Wake Forest University has been test optional since way before COVID, and they will continue to be. So there are some schools where we actually really believe them when they say that. And you can look at the historical data in terms of how they've evaluated students. Looking back, and there's a lot of data that was released about 6 months ago, specifically to last year's, the class of 2021's graduating class, because class of 2020 was just, that was a mess. That was, we kind of, applications were already submitted by the time those students were being evaluated. So they didn't really get to benefit from the test optional world the way the class last year of 2021 did. And we can look specifically at Cornell University, did some, not all schools were open with their data, but Cornell did a great job in terms of their data and releasing, even in their early decision pool, that it was about 50-50 in terms of the students that were accepted versus that were not. The thing about test optional is this: when it is on the table, kids have to be very careful about what they're submitting. If your child is not scoring in the top 25%, they should not be submitting their test scores. So I have students who, we're going to talk about the ACT for a second. I'm just literally thinking of one particular student who the ACT, the highest, the perfect score on an ACT is 36. So anywhere from kind of like a 32 to, people get into Harvard with a 32 on the ACT. So anywhere from like a 32 to a 36 is pretty impressive and shows great skill. So I have a student who was applying to UT Austin, and he had a 32 and he wanted to submit that 32. But when we looked at the data for out-of-state students in specifically applying to the business school, he was below average. He was falling just below the 50th percentile. So we said, absolutely no way are we submitting his score, because it's only going to hurt him. That's not helping him in that situation for a school that was actually test optional. He ended up being accepted. So we made the right call on that one, right? So there are some students who might submit a score, even a good score, right? A strong score, but it still might fall below that average of what they're taking, and not 50%. If you're in the 50%, do not send your score. We're talking, you've got to be in the top. So yes, colleges are actually test optional. This is a real thing. I think school to school, it's very specific. And there are some that say they're test optional and they aren't really, but that number is very small in comparison. And any college would be pretty honest with you. Again, this isn't secret information. I mean, I love my job as a college counselor, and all I do all day long is digest this stuff. But this information is there for the taking, meaning you could literally call up a school admissions office and you could talk to them about their test optional policy and about the percentage of students who didn't submit scores who were accepted. And I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. That website here, fairtest.org, is amazing. You could just go down the rabbit hole of just click, 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 click. They are compiling tons and tons and tons of data and tracking this information. Again, it existed before COVID, but it absolutely blew up during the process, for sure. Yeah. Questions on that? No? Yes, Michelle? I'm watching the time, so I know we're gonna answer some questions here at the end, but I just wanted to get through these last few slides as we have a wonderful captive audience. And one of the joys of my work is the end of the process, when students get all these wonderful admissions decisions and get to make these choices about where they're going to spend the next 4 years of their life. And notice I said for students. And I'm going to say this as I'm a parent. So I feel like I've earned the right to be able to say this as well. This is for your students. And so I put this slide up here just to remind parents, and you'll get this, Michelle will send this to everybody. But I want you guys to look at this fabulous list of questions that I have, and think about this, because what would you say yes to any of these? During dinner conversations, do you talk frequently about your child's grades and college applications, often forgetting to ask what he or she finds interesting or fun about school? Do you sometimes pressure your child to engage in substantial college preparation while they're on vacation, like studying vocabulary cards or math problems, instead of ensuring he or she has ample time to relax or play? To encourage your child to do certain community service projects that he or she is not interested in because you think these projects will be helpful on his or her college application and quote unquote, what I'll say, look good? Do you visit and talk about primarily highly selective colleges with your child rather than a wide variety of schools, including less selective ones? And that last one is really important to me. It does not matter if you have an 8th grader or you have a 10th grader or an 11th grader, or if your child's a high school senior. It's really important to talk about a variety of schools. I meet so many kids who will come and talk to me about a school that they absolutely love and be terrified to tell their parents that they like it, because their parents have told them that these are only the best, or these are the only ones that you can choose from. And that's not me saying those aren't great schools. Of course, they're great schools. But when you're only talking to your child about schools that are accepting less than 10% of the people who apply, that means they have a 90% chance of not getting in. Or worse, a school that has a 5% acceptance rate. That's a 95% chance your child is going to be disappointed. And that's okay. Kids get disappointed every year, but we want to help celebrate those things that they actually do really, really enjoy. Those these are the things that make kids really strong applicants in the process, helping them to choose those choose those classes, choose the activities that they actually enjoy. Those kids write their own college essays. They have too many stories to share and tell. We're trying to figure out which ones we can share and which ones we're going to have to hold off on. So the more you can encourage your child to do the things that they love, this process, I promise, becomes much easier for your child, becomes much easier for you. If you think that there is a certain prescription, if you came here tonight thinking I was going to say, do this, this, and this, and they'll go here, it never works out that way. So again, we're going to talk a lot more about course selection in January. Right now, if you have children who are in middle school or early high school, 9th grade, my best advice to you, encourage them to do their schoolwork, encourage them to turn in their assignments, encourage them to find a system to stay organized, to engage with their teachers. That is the best thing you can do for college preparation right now. Once we're in 10th and 11th grade, we start talking about more specific things and other things that students can be doing. And I think our next slide, Michelle, I think we put something on here. Just if you guys, oh yeah, these are my tips for the end about focusing on strengths, not weaknesses, and enjoy high school. That's really, really important. Again, the happiest kids, the most well-adjusted kids, the best college applicants, by the way, who are amazing, amazing, amazing to work with and have lots of choices, are the ones who enjoy their high school experience. So the last few slides are our contact information. I know Michelle has some information she's going to go over, and if there's any additional questions, I know we're right at 8 o'clock, but I'm happy to stick around and answer anything else that was asked. So the next slide is the contact information for Collegewise. If you have a child who's interested in learning more about Collegewise or how we can help you, we have lots of great free information on our website. I've also put my colleague's information up here. She's great. She helps me stay organized and set up appointments to meet with families. So her information is here, Jennifer Toronto. You can put this, her email, you can send her an email directly. And really just gives you a snapshot of how we work with younger students. We do not work with 8th graders at Collegewise. We really, again, it goes back to, we really want them to focus on just doing their schoolwork during 8th grade. And then we do lots of fun stuff like this. And Michelle's been so great to invite me to so many of the S4 programs. And again, I'm going to be back in January talking about course selection, and we'll talk very specifics then. Because I know everybody has kind of their own situation at that point. Yeah, what they're looking for.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to say that if any of you are interested in having continuing this conversation that Amy shared with you today, we are offering a smaller, more intimate group setting called Parent Conversations this Wednesday at 12:30. Again, it's free, 10 people, all confidential. You have to show your face, come with your questions, learn from other parents as well. So if you'd like to attend, come to that. Perfectly apropos Amy's last slide and that last few slides about stress and teenagers right now. I've invited Erica Commissar, who is a licensed clinical social worker, and she writes quite frequently for the Wall Street Journal. I read a few of her stories. I thought they were great and invited her to speak in front of us. And so she's coming on December 13th at 7. She's just published this book, Chicken Little, The Sky Isn't Falling, 2 days ago, last week on the 2nd of November. So if you're interested, take a picture of this little graph here, and you can go right to the registration page and register for other for those two programs. And then in 2022, as Amy said, why course selection is important to the college application process, Tuesday, January 11th at 7 p.m. And then we will have parent conversations a couple of days later to discuss that in greater detail and to answer your questions in a smaller, more intimate setting. And then finally, from S4, these are the areas that we can help you in terms of study skills, executive functioning, subject matter, note-taking, time management. We do math through calculus. We also do physics and statistics, writing, how to stay focused and on track. And we can do this in a way that makes sense to you in terms of frequency. What we have found a lot since COVID is that kids really need to be held accountable. And so we're able to do shorter sessions after an initial hour session a week to make sure that students are in fact using their planner and are in fact making study guides and did start writing their outline for a college essay, their outline for an English paper. So we will hold your student accountable so you don't have to, and you can really enjoy your student. So with that, any questions, just put it in the chat. I'll read it out and Amy will answer it. I did read one of the questions earlier on that I'd like to read. Let's see if I can just find it. My child has taken computer science as language as school offered. Now we are concerned that colleges don't accept it generally.
So didn't take any world language, like a foreign language. So this, again, it does happen sometimes. And I, as a former high school guidance counselor, I will never throw a guidance counselor under the bus. These people work very, very hard, and most of them have very massive caseloads. And I will say we see stuff like this a lot. So for your particular question, for someone who hasn't taken a world language, what we'll say a foreign language, and took computers instead, depending on your student's circumstances, and I don't know who asked this question, but some students who receive special education services or support services are given a waiver not to take a foreign language and can take computer classes in its place, or take sign language classes in its place to fulfill graduation requirements for high school. Unfortunately, depending on the college, it doesn't always translate that well. So if that could be one situation. I don't know this parent's child's background. That's one option. The other is if your district allows for a computer class to count as a foreign language requirement, that's going to be listed on the school profile. So back to kind of what we talked about earlier tonight, where your child is not going to be penalized when things aren't offered at your high school. If that is a graduation requirement, if that is allowed to count as a graduation requirement and that counts and they can actually graduate with a high school diploma, taking the computer classes, then a college has to acknowledge that. Now, most colleges in the United States, depending on, with a few exceptions for maybe engineering majors, will require a foreign language in order for students to graduate. Maybe it might only be 2 years of foreign language, but so your child who's only ever taken computer classes might actually end up going to a college where they have to take 2 years of Spanish or 2 years of French, whatever of foreign language they actually choose. So that's a very specific case-by-case situation. And again, without knowing a lot about the background, I don't know the best way to advise there. But Michelle, maybe she could just reach out to you separately and I could connect with her about her child's situation. But again, you know that your child is not penalized for things that were not offered to them, or that were allowed to, they were allowed to do in place of something else. We talked about that 5 math, science, English, history, where we want students to do 4 years of those core subjects. I will say too, I work with a lot of kids who may not take a science class senior year because they're taking 3 English classes because they really enjoy English and reading and more kind of a liberal arts focus than kind of research, math, science focus. So there's some gray in that advice, and this would kind of fall into that box as well, just depending on what's offered.
Amy, we have a couple other questions. My 9th grade student hasn't been in full-time school since 6th grade and is really struggling.
Yeah.
How will COVID impact his transcript in this case?
So he hasn't been in school for, the pandemic. We're in year 3, if you can believe that. Our children who are in school right now, this is their 3rd school year that has been affected by the pandemic, which is crazy to think about. I have a high school junior as well as an 8th grade daughter. And I thought the other day, wow, her entire middle school experience has been with a mask on, right? Which is crazy to think about that. And your thought and your question, I appreciate, because we as professionals are seeing a lot of deficits in a lot of students right now, just in terms of their ability to manage, to function, to stay on track, and perhaps even for your son, just to get to school, right? And so colleges are very aware of this. And my advice to you, ninth grade is a little bit of a pass year. It's a transition. Before the COVID, it was a transition year. A lot of students moving from middle school to high school, and how that changes and expectations change. So there's a lot of colleges out there that give not a full pass, but give a little bit of a pass if there's something going on in ninth grade. So my advice to you as a parent would be to use this time right now, connect with someone like Michelle, connect with someone who can work with your student to help get them back on track, set up a plan with his teachers or her teachers to be able to meet pretty regularly, to make sure assignments are getting turned in. I can't tell you how many times I see kids' grades and I talk to the students I work with, and they'll say, well, I just didn't turn that in, or I didn't know when the deadline was. And oh, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me, because I'm like, just write it down somewhere. And they haven't been taught how to do this. And we just assume our kids know how to do these things, but they don't have a study skills class. They're not really taught how to manage their time, how to take notes, how to do all these things. So anything you can do here in ninth grade to help them, I would throw the kitchen sink at it right now. Secondly, and I just wanted to follow up really quick, Michelle. I'm just going to say, additionally, if you're having significant trouble just getting your child to school, reach out to mental health professionals around you, reach out to the school counselor. Also know that colleges, there's this great thing on the application. Every single college application has a spot where you can give additional information. So if you had a significant loss in your family, if COVID just really affected your child in a negative way, if they weren't able to be in the classroom for 3 full years, if that, all that stuff can be explained, and which is okay, but then colleges want to see what happened after that. So if there's a deficit now, let's say in 9th or 10th grade for your child, the idea is by the time we get to 11th or 12th grade, they'll kind of be more of an upward trend, so that you'll be able to, your child will be able to talk about how they struggled and then what they did to kind of move past that. So for you, I would say the answer to that question is support, support, support from anyone who you can get to help your child kind of get back to possibly where they were before COVID.
And at the risk of doing self-promotion, which I don't mean to be doing, but this is exactly what
you're good at this. You're very good at this. I have many, many clients who use Michelle. That's how I found her. So yes, this is what they do at S4, which is amazing. I have some clients who literally doing those, couple times a week check-ins with Michelle's staff. Just again, as parents, I say, they don't listen to us. My own kids don't listen to me, right? Everybody else's kids do, but not my own. So it's okay to reach out and ask for that support. And if S4 doesn't make sense for you, reach out to the counselor at the school, see what kind of support you could get, see what kind of system you could set up with your child, because there's only so much you can share with a college, meaning you don't get to show up 3 years from now when your child's applying to college and say, well, the pandemic affected them. It did, but there's a lot of other kids who are able to get back on track. Right. And again, remember what we talked about with that transcript, your child is going to be evaluated and compared to the other people in their school, to the other people who were able to get back on track. So if your child needs a little help getting there, I'm all for offering that help. Now, we don't want them having 5 tutors in every single subject 5 days a week so they can take 5 AP classes. Amy did not say that. But getting back on track and learning some of the skills and having someone teach them how to function a little bit better, I'm a big fan of that for sure. The consequences are too great for not giving them that help.
Absolutely. All right, a couple more questions and then I think we're going to wrap it up. The first one is, what is the weight that art portfolios have on a college application? And then I have one.
Great question. Yes. So again, back to the gray of it, it depends on the school. So if you have a child who's applying to a specific art program or an art major at a school, a lot is the answer to that. Admissions counselors do not evaluate art portfolios. I am not an artist. And if I worked in an admissions office at a college does not mean I'm qualified to say if you're a good artist or not. In the same respect, I'm not a soccer coach. So you can tell me your child's a great soccer player, but until I've got a soccer coach at a college telling me that your child is a great soccer player, that's who we're going to listen to. So an art portfolio, if your child loves art, encourage them to work on a portfolio. Again, you can get help with a portfolio. There's portfolio classes. Your art teacher at your child's high school can help them get a portfolio together. If your child is not applying as an art major, which I have this happen a lot with me, but they're very talented artists and they have some kind of talent to showcase. Maybe it's art. Maybe they're an amazing singer. Maybe they play the guitar. Maybe they play the saxophone. Maybe they're an amazing actress or actor. Your child can always share that information with a college. Either there's a place on the actual application to upload videos or share files with them performing their talent, or you can actually send individual emails to the college admissions representative saying, I want this to be evaluated as part of my application. Now, depending on the school, they might or might not consider that. If you apply to a massive state school like a Michigan or a Penn State, they're not interested in your portfolio. They have way too many applications to consider that stuff or to even look at that. But perhaps a smaller school who holistically evaluates students, they might absolutely look at that. There are some schools who also, Vanderbilt does this. I'm just thinking, I was actually helping a student with that yesterday. Vanderbilt does this, WashU does this, Skidmore does this. If you have something, there's literally a question that says, if you have a talent or interest that you would like to share with the admissions committee, please share that here. And there's a little upload button and you can literally upload a file. So you could have a recording of you playing a song on the violin. You could be singing something. You could upload your art portfolio. You could share articles that you'd written for your school newspaper because you're interested in journalism. There are places to actually showcase. And the colleges that ask those and give that space for that, I love those because we know they're caring a little bit more about that human side of the application we talked about at the beginning. Other schools, big state schools, they just don't have the manpower to look through all that stuff. So probably those are the schools wouldn't weight very heavily.
Last question, does a specific high school give you an edge to get into a specific college? If so, is that information out there somewhere?
Oh, yes and no. Again, I hate answering all these questions with all this gray. So it depends. There's a lot of information and there's not one place like fairtest.org that'll tell you about all the test optional schools. There's not one place that says this is a great high school to go to if you want to go to this college. But colleges absolutely have relationships with schools. Colleges absolutely find success with what we'll call feeder high schools, where they might have had a great graduating class. They might have 10 or 20 kids who've come through that particular high school, who have come and just been rock stars on their campus, who have really gotten involved and kind of, showcased all the wonderful things about that school. And so colleges will go back to that high school and they're like, oh, well, you sent us, 10 great kids last year. We're coming back to see who else you have now. We like how your teachers are teaching. We like the opportunities. We like the way your kids write. So that absolutely happens. But there are no mandates. There are no quotas. When you hear things, people say, well, Harvard only takes 2 kids from this high school a year. That's absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. Colleges are very focused. And again, we could do a whole new webinar next year about this as well. But colleges are focused on their institutional priorities. That's their first priority, is how are they selecting students? What are their goals? Are they focused on diversity? Do they need more full pay students? Do they need more men? Do they need more women? All these things play into the decision of who they're choosing in that particular year. So no, the high school you go doesn't mean you've got a better shot at a particular school. For most of our schools in Fairfield County, they use something called Naviance. So your child, once they get to 9th grade, will have a Naviance login, username, and password. Some schools are also using another very similar system called SCORE. But basically, that's a platform where you can go and actually see where your child falls in relation to other students at that high school and where they've been accepted or not. You literally can look up by the individual school. So I could look up Tulane University and see how many kids last year applied from Staples High School, how many were accepted, how many were waitlisted. That information doesn't give any students' names, but it will actually give you those numbers and data points, GPAs. So a GPA, your child's GPA compared to a GPA at that actual high school, we're comparing apples and apples at that point, right? A high school at a GPA at one high school versus a GPA at another high school in a different state, we're comparing apples and pineapples. So Naviance and Score are great data places for you as parents and for your children to be able to go to see, and there are some, for some of my students, I'll say, well, that college has never not accepted someone from your high school, which is a great data point, right? So if you're interested in that information is definitely on Naviance to see. So yeah, colleges try to make their job easier, you guys. I remind parents all the time and students, colleges are in the business of accepting students. They actually want to accept students. Their goal is not to reject people. There's just only so many spots to go around. And so the idea, hopefully, of tonight was just to give you guys a little bit of flavoring. Think about some of the many facets and pieces that go into the application. And if you take nothing away from tonight, please know that grades matter. The classes that your child takes matter, but they've got to find those things that they love, and we want them to be successful doing those. So this is not them staying up till 2 a.m, spending 8 hours a day doing homework, so they can stay in those classes. There's no balance for those kids. So anyway, thank you, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Always an honor.
And we appreciate it. And for anyone who's comes to the parent session on Wednesday, I will see you guys there and be able to answer more obviously specific questions to your individual students at that time. So yeah.
Amy, really, I think I got so many thank yous, great job. I mean, amazing. And they continue to come in actually now. And so really, Amy, thank you of giving of your time. Here's one extremely insightful. Thank you for that. And thank you for this very informative session, Amy. Just it goes on and on.
Great. Thank you guys. The more people that have great information, the better for all of our kids together.
Exactly. So Amy, I'll see you on Wednesday, and anybody on here that is interested in participating in parent conversations, just register because there are only 10 spots. All right, everybody, enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.